Hi guys, this is Miss Sheridan,
And Mrs. Carmack.
and we are here to go over the Rift poem analysis strategy with you using our mentor text, First Day at School poem by Roger McGough. And by now you should have already gone through the Nearpod or PowerPoint going over each of the letters R-I-F-T. So you are familiar with that, and you should have read through the poem twice at least by now. So we already read this poem on our own and annotated and analyzed it, and we want to go over with you how we did that. So first, you should have picked up a handout, the Rift Literary Analysis Strategy, and you are going to be filling this in either on hard copy or digitally with a poem. So we're going to model how we did that. So we obviously read the poem together, and we went stanza by stanza for each thing. We're going to start with R, repetition. So we looked for words and phrases that are repeated. To go, we saw that repeated twice. We see so it's saying they are all so big, so noisy, so much must have been born in uniform. That don't let me in. That are rough. That swallow you up. So what you're going to do is you're going to do that through the whole poem. So we went and highlighted other phrases or words that are repeated. Railings, things, lessons, lesson. I wish, my name, I wish, I. And we take that information and we're just going to highlight it for right now. And then we're going to plug it in the graphic organizer in a little bit. So we've annotated for our repetition. So that's R. We got that out of the way. The next thing you'll do is go through and look for images. And if you need to refer to your handout, you can go back and remind yourself. Remember, images identify images and sensory details such as sight, sound, taste, odor, and texture. So we're going through, why are they all so big? Other children. That makes you think that, our narrator is probably a little kid, right? He looks at all these kids, these big kids, these so noisy. He's probably small. He's talking about games that swallow you up. It gives you that mental image of this really kind of intimidating environment for him. And then it talks about how the lessons sound slimy and small, right? That's appealing to our senses. So we want to highlight that too. And then it also talks about when there's puddles, yellow wellies. If you don't know what a welly is, it's actually a yellow rain boot. So he's talking about puddles and yellow rain boots. It gives you that mental image of maybe when you were young dancing in puddles in your rain boots. And then, so now we've highlighted our images, we're going to move on to our figurative language. And you can go back and remind yourself that this is where you'll identify and analyze non-standard use of language, including metaphors, similes, repetition, omission. You don't necessarily have to do the repetition since we already did that for R. And also unusual word order. I will go ahead and tell you that this poem does not have a lot of metaphors and similes, but it does have a lot of unordinary, incorrect English spelling.
Yeah, we can see that there's a lot of play on words that help us realize our speaker is a young child, such as a million, billion, willion. That's obviously the kind of phrase a kid would use. He's getting words wrong, like lesson, going back to that, which was repeated, so we have it blue, but it's also an example of using a word wrong. And classrooms, obviously he's not heard of an actual classroom. And even the last line, teacher, the one who makes the tea, right? We know that teachers are not making tea, but he is unfamiliar with what a teacher is. So it doesn't have tons of similes and metaphors, but it has a lot of words that are, kind of used incorrectly and in a humorous way. So you can look for those things also in that box.
Exactly. And now we're going to move on to our tone and theme. Now, for this step, I would encourage you maybe to just start by looking for your tone words. So after you've read the stanza, what is the author's tone? We kind of found that it was fearful, nervous. He's talking about keep out wolves and monsters, carry off and eat children. Perhaps the teacher will read it for me. It does get a little lighter in the last stanza. Maybe he's a little hopeful. So the first two stanzas are really about these big, noisy kids, games that swallow you up, the railings that keep out wolves and monsters. He's in this unfamiliar environment, right? He has this fearful, nervous tone. But by the last stanza, even though he's a little doubtful, he ends by, well, perhaps the teacher will read it for me. So he's changing his attitude, his tone a little bit. So after you've highlighted, what we want you to do is to go into this graphic organizer. And here's what we did. So it asks you, examine the title and text. I want you to go find all the repetition words and phrases and put them out, either by stanza or have it to just by stanza. And then it asks you, what effect does it have on the poem? So after going through and looking at those repeated words and phrases, the effect that we found, that and things create a creature-like feel of the environment surrounding this kid. The word so emphasizes the largeness of it all because we have so big, so noisy, so much. I wish, and my name at the end of the poem have the focus on the kid and with his identity, and to inform the reader that the narrator still maybe has questions about his role and his identity in this new environment. But also he has that hope that we talked about with the tone. And so then you'll go back through and find your yellow highlighted words, those images you found. Copy them over by stanza. We found that why are they all so big? Remember, why are they all so big and noisy? You're taking that and putting that in the graphic organizer. This creates an image of larger children being loud so that we know our speaker is probably younger and smaller. Games that swallow you up. Makes the reader again seem smaller and fearful. This is also an example of personification, so I'm going to underline it as well, which we did. And again, stanza 2, lessons. He's purposely spelling this wrong. This kind of tells us that he is a younger kid. Maybe he doesn't know how to spell it yet. In stanza 3, these yellow wellies. Wellies are rain boots, so we can see that they're brightly colored rain boots around the children's feet.
And when we get to the figurative language, like we kind of just talked about, there's not a whole lot of typical standard figurative language, but there's a lot of non-standard use of language or unusual word orders or even just unusual spelling. So we've got million, billion, million, glass rooms, teacher. And again, you always want to think about what was the purpose behind that, right? It's one thing for it to just be there and kind of funny, but think about what was the author doing. So we wrote that all these phrases and words show that the non-standard use of language and unusual word order, making it clear that our speaker is a child. He doesn't understand a lot about this new world that he's a part of. And then lastly, with the tone and theme. So Ms. Sheridan was talking about how we noticed it kind of starts out very fearful and worrisome and nervous. And we can tell that by the end, he isn't 100% confident yet, but he feels there's kind of a shift from keeping out monsters wolves and monsters that might carry off and eat children to perhaps the teacher will read it for me, right? That maybe this person, this mysterious teacher figure is going to be someone who can help me out. And so we kind of came to the conclusion, as you can see on number 2 here, that the theme is something along the lines of sometimes growing up means facing unfamiliar situations, but what matters most is your attitude. So in the end, having that positive attitude to carry forward with him through to this unfamiliar place. And, we assumed here that this is probably a little kindergartner starting school for the first time, and a lot of new situations facing him.
All right, well, we hope this video helped you. And if you need to pause at any time and go back and review, you are welcome to do that. And thank you.